I really wanted to be able, at some point in my life, to start a big corporation off some innovation that I came up with. But I'm at HP. And at times, I've been so frustrated at HP, and can we be confidential here? Because it's so much more fun when I can talk confidentially. When they came up with HP Invent, I was this close to sneaking out and changing that last N to an S. Because that's what it felt like they were doing, invest. We had all this talent in-house at HP, and yet we were buying these startup companies. I thought, where's our opportunity to do things? And the one really cool thing I got to do, I think it's okay to talk about it now because it failed. It was called Atomic Resolution Storage, and it was before we knew the cloud and being online everywhere was going to be so powerful. And we thought we could beat SD with this little micro electromechanical system that was basically a tiny MEMS hard drive that moved in XY. And basically, the physical limits we thought that SD was hitting were overcome, and we died overnight. We couldn't make it work. And so I've been trying to survive, and frankly, I started to feel a little disenfranchised, and I thought, wait a minute. If you really want to be able to make a difference in the world, and if you can learn how to make it here, you're really going to be more prepared when you get outside. And I don't mean that just as a cut to HP, because we still do some great things there. There's a lot of great talent there. But we really are just nursing the core. We're nursing that gorilla on Main Street. I don't know if I'm using language you're familiar with. They're king of that laser market, and we're just keeping it going. And there is a lot of innovation, but there's not anything real disruptive. And I want to address that during the course of the talk. So I call it pushing boulders uphill. You may wonder why. It's an analogy that me and my fellow teammates have tried to use because we need to be able to speak in code sometimes. But really, it's about overcoming the hurdles of enterprise innovation. So when I started out life, and by the way, I wish this were the story of my dream of being this corporate level innovator, but it's really the story more about a detour on that, to be able to do this well in corporate America, which I think can be actually a little harder in some ways, a little easier in other ways. So it used to be so easy in the beginning. I put this up because I think many of you can probably resonate with it. Maybe instead of heading to the garage, you headed to your computer. I'm older now, so I didn't have computers when I was that age, but I'd head to the garage. And then that experience just led me to become an engineer, to get too much education, to fall in love with design methodology, etc. And when I entered the professional world, I saw all these new challenges. Implementation was more difficult because we were working with bigger systems. Marketability. In other words, I'm realizing, and by the way, I hope a lot of what I'm saying is like, well, duh. But we have to keep these things in mind as we're innovating in today's world, and I want to get into that as we go on. Field problems. If you're not following a good design methodology and considering field problems in advance, it just invites problems in the field, and they cost a lot more than problems you've dealt with by exploring the design space very broadly. And then the size of the design space is very large, so you want to explore that as broadly as you can early on. And then there's just more and more considerations, but it dawned on me after a short time, even at the undergrad level, I will always be a student of design. My particular expertise is in multi-physical system modeling, but I wanted to add design because I realized there was one thing I couldn't answer with all my modeling skills, and that was, what's the best architecture? And so you really have to be a student of design methodology, and there's really no difference in that, for that in the software realm, I find. And a key to this, I think, is acquiring and mastering proven tools. I love to do woodworking. I have a table saw. And I learned very quickly that just because you have a table saw doesn't mean you can make good cuts. That some of the tools we're going to talk about, I'd like you to just consider them to be instances of a class. Please abstract some of what I'm talking about and track the spirit of it, because that's really what I'm trying to give to you today. And for those of you that resonate with some of what I'm talking about, and you feel like you're already doing that in different ways, I actually hope to talk to you, because this is a work in progress. But I'm eager to talk to those that haven't thought of some of these things as well. So the first big tool I came across, as I've already said, is design methodology, but also Lean Sigma. And when I applied this to, it was a great opportunity. I was working at a semiconductor manufacturing firm. They were making automated wet processing tools for the semiconductor industry. And I introduced these principles because they really didn't have design methodology. And the engineers really embraced it. And we were making great progress. But I also noticed some interesting hurdles with personality. One was pecking order. It really got in the way sometimes. And I want to say, these are problems I identified because I was really still trying to be this great student of design to become a great innovator. But the power of this design methodology and Lean Sigma methods wasn't invalidated, it was just challenged, and it was a little frustrating. So I saw not invented here. I even saw not invented by me getting in the way. Ego, debate, and even at one time, one of these proven tools that have been used with great success by many people, they were just changing the tool in the midst of the exercise so they'd get the outcome they wanted rather than trusting the tool. And so I thought, oh, how do I deal with things like this? Well, it wasn't much longer. It seems like when you identify a problem, you become more cognizant of what's a possible solution. How many of you have heard of Edward de Bono? Just a handful. Edward de Bono came up with the 6 thinking hats. A brilliant Rhodes Scholar gentleman. He writes tons of books. And he came up with this methodology. And I'm sure all of you can appreciate the power that we have as engineers when we break vectors into components and deal with them individually, put them back together. If we weren't able to do that, our world wouldn't be where it is technologically. Well, what if you could do that with something even more powerful than vectors, like thoughts? And that's what this methodology does. Again, this is a tool that's really helped me in my team and individual design exercises. But again, the spirit of this talk is really identify the weaknesses, the challenges you're facing, and there probably is a tool out there nowadays. If not, you can even benchmark looking at some existing tools and abstract a tool that might help you. And that's part of the spirit of this talk. But in the 6 thinking hats, Edward has defined 6 thinking modes. And my favorite one, although you can't really have a favorite here, but it's the blue hat, because it's the one monitoring the thinking process. White hat is about information, red hat feelings, green hat creativity, yellow hat benefits, and black hat cautions. If we had a whole day, I really couldn't cover the 6 hats methodology adequately. But if you have someone that you know that's skilled in this process, you should ask them sometime to come facilitate a creativity meeting. You'd be surprised. I'm certified in this method. I'm really glad I went to do that because, like I said, these tools, it may be easy to understand, but then you have to master them over time. So you sequence thinking through all components. Each person gets their turn. You play by the rules. That's probably the biggest help. It feels like a game. You notice that it's colored hats. It's actually quite deep process, but the biggest advantage here is that you don't bump into each other with your thinking. You know, Franklin, if I was talking to you about something, I might not know what thinking mode you're in. And we could actually, our thinking could actually be bumping into each other. But if I identify Franklin, let's be in red hat mode, or let's be in green hat mode. Now we're thinking in parallel, we're not bumping into each other. That's the big takeaway on this technique. And by the way, if you just buy the 6 Thinking Hats book, read it carefully, and start practicing it, you'll probably master it. It's not a very expensive book. For those of you more geeky like me, wait, this is Develop.Idaho. For all of you, I like to think of it as axes. Why is what we know, positive, and don't know. Yellow and black are on the same axis. The advantages, the potential disadvantages. The red hat would be another in a 3-axis coordinate plane of feeling good about this idea, not feeling good about it. The blue hat's kind of like the origin. And then the green hat saying, let's move around in this space. And let's consider plenty of ideas. And if you are careful in your sequencing of these, you'll get better solo thinking and better group thinking. Well, that tool really did help get over some of those previous problems. And I've seen, and it's documented over and over, you really do get better ideas in less time. But then there still seem to be some barriers. And this group, called Vital Smarts, came up with a book called Influencer. Now, they've written 4 monumental books. How many of you have heard of or read Crucial Conversations? Okay, good. Crucial Confrontations. Their other 2 books are Influencer and Change Anything. Influencer is more about doing things societally or in a big group. Change Anything is more about personal change. I'm sure none of you need that, but if you ever do, it might be these are the jokes. I'm sorry, I don't get much better than that. Thank you. But I wanted to just show you the cover of the book and point out, here's the key takeaway on this tool. By the way, there's not enough time to go into how to actually use these tools. Again, for instances, please abstract from what I'm getting at. We're really trying to figure out what are the things we have to influence to get this boulder, which is like a big idea, up the organizational hill. And if you are able to incorporate all 6 sources of these influence centers, your probability of getting that idea up the hill is much stronger. But the key takeaways I've found is build a team. And you may say, well, of course, but it's not just a team. Try to find influencers and build ownership, and I want to talk more about that specifically. So how many of you have heard of Nancy, as Thom was speaking of? Great. She's a great person to get to know here in town. She's a business professor at BSU. She leads the innovation group there. She works closely with Kevin Learned, if any of you know him. And what's fascinating about Nancy, she's really only doing one new thing. She's pulling together people that realize, you know, even if I'm creative, I could stagnate over time. If my organization's creative, I could stagnate over time. So, how important is perspective? And as an individual, how much perspective can you have by yourself? Not as much as a good group. So she doesn't just get a group together, she forms this gang, and this gang is made up of quite diverse people. I think the endpoints to me are Jamie with Drake Cooper and the guy representing the Trey McIntyre Project, which is a dance company. But also you've got the football coach in here too. Why? They get together to talk about the challenges their companies or their groups are having with regard to performance. And they say, hey, how can we help one another? Tell me your problems. And they help one another with creativity to keep that high-performing nature that their organizations already have. So really, my key takeaway from getting to know Nancy is she's preaching to the choir. She's getting together people that are already sold on her concepts, and she's making that choir better. But again, they have to be high-performing and creative groups. And I think the real key is she's trying to attract the non-choir members, okay? To say, well, look how well these organizations are sustaining their performance. And then obviously now she has several gangs because people are getting sold on it. And it benefits the whole valley the more she does. Now my question, as I saw this, and by the way, when I met Nancy, I hope you all know this feeling as I mention it. You see someone that came up with a great, incredibly brilliant idea, but it was elegant and so simple, and you were angry because you wished you had thought of it. And that's how I felt toward Nancy. But I thought, it's not too late. How can I do this in the enterprise? And at HP, locally, I'm thinking, I don't have any dancers, and I don't have any football coaches, so it's going to be a struggle. But marketing people, you know, they're weird, so they might help. That wasn't fair, because engineers are really weird, right? And so another key, getting influencers on the team and obeying those centers of influence. And as multidisciplined as possible. Perhaps even bring someone in from outside. So why am I haven't always been this passionate about trying to do this in corporate America. And I saw this book on a lot of people's bookshelves, and one of the people that I was getting to know real well, a strong business type, kept mentioning these principles. And so I finally cracked the book, and it got me scared. If we look at performance versus time, we see that most companies that are doing great in the industry, they have this low quality use product line, medium quality, high quality, and then the most demanding. But this is true history repeating itself over and over again. I thought Mikkel, I didn't know what to think of Mikkel until he talked about the fear of being disrupted and that he wanted to disrupt himself. And I went, that guy is brilliant. Because at least he's aware that this is going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's literally a question of when. Some disruptive technology always comes along. It doesn't look very promising at the beginning. But over time, because it's easier, it's less expensive, it starts encroaching on this low quality usage. So let's go through the bullet points because they point this out. By the way, as I've tried to talk to people inside HP, it's basically confirmed what I've learned from this material. There's no barriers to innovation, and they're right. There are people making great strides on our products and on our technologies. And successful companies, especially those that got disrupted, they were the top of their game, they are innovating on their core, but they're not doing anything disruptive. So what are the barriers to sustaining innovation? Well, the financial focus on keeping customers going. As the competition gets stronger, we have to just work to the bone just to keep the customer happy because our product's becoming commoditized. So you're just really trying to maintain that installed base. But again, these new and less expensive technologies arise. They attract the low-end customers. And then these unsuspecting market gorillas, by the way, gorilla, in case you don't know, is just the term for someone who's at the top of the market. They have the bulk of the market share. It looks like there's no way anyone can overtake them, but really it's just a matter of time, depending on the type of industry. And they start focusing on their higher-end customers as these new, lower technologies start to take over. New and less expensive technology improves. It encroaches on the customer base from below. And then these ever-increasing improvements grab the market at accelerating rates. Sometimes near instant death occurs. It's really quite rapid. The other telling thing is that the company that was disrupted usually did not introduce the disruptive technology and they go completely out of business. It's been rare. It has to be a slower process on this that the company was actually able to sustain itself through that time. So here are some old problems that illustrate this. Excavation went from steam shovels to hydraulics. You may not know this, but when hydraulics were first introduced, they weren't that great. They were basically on the back of farm tractors, but they got progressively better. And now, do you see any steam shovels? No, you only see hydraulics. You've heard about the steel mill industry problems? They're being replaced because we're getting so good at recycling that mini mills can do every aspect of metal production at much lower costs. And by the way, if you weren't a mechanical engineer, you might not be savvy to this, but one of the harder things to do is make good sheet metal. And sheet metal is used in the auto industry. And that was the last holy grail that the mini mills took over. We still need some large mills, but not near as many. And then you probably were all, even the youngest people in the room are old enough to know about this problem. Hard drives, companies born and crashed seemingly overnight compared to these other industries. So even the people that try to anticipate, even the best companies, aware or not, can miss the boat. Seagate has survived, but they've had some near deaths because even though they were anticipating what the next disruption was going to be, they weren't finding the right customers. They were going out to their existing customers thinking it was going to come from them, but it came from a completely different place. So, lesson that I'm trying to follow for my own experience here is I've got to be watching along with my team for competitors, new markets, new customers, and emerging market techniques. The group that I meet with regularly at HP, I would not have discovered some of the new marketing social changes, like, for example, the sharing economy. There's huge potential for many product bases in the sharing economy. But we don't even, to my knowledge, have any pilot programs experimenting with that. So, in summary, here's the current best methodology I can come up with. You've got to be multidisciplined with your team, with your approach, and even with other aspects of your team. So, in the sense of the team at the first level, you've got to do it as a team because I don't get to do this full time. That's part of my frustration, which I'll address in just a moment. It's rare that one person can do it alone, but I've seen it happen, by the way. Grow the team in skills and participants. And this is really key. It's not just the innovation, it's the skills you're adding to your team. Every once in a while you need to go out and learn something new or be cognizant to say, why aren't we making more progress? What tool can we adopt or what strategy can we adopt that would help us? The approach. Understanding the difference between technologists, engineers, business people, marketers, financial analysts, etc., and respecting the differences and welcoming them. And try to get even more diverse than that as you can. We've talked about some of this already. Build broad ownership. There's no easier way to get that boulder up the hill than if everyone on the team feels like they own this idea. And how are you going to do that? Well, build and innovate throughout the entire business. The innovation may be simplifying the product and doing something really clever in sales or marketing. And so that's what I mean by multidisciplined innovation. And then understand these things. Business challenges, pains and desires, customers and company. I should have put engineering or development challenges too, because if you can solve even just something in the development cycle, that's a big win. So if you take time to assess for your company, for your industry, what are the pains for us and our customers? What are the desires for us and our customers? And really detail those out. You can come up with a lot more ideas. That's basically spending a lot of time in what's called the white hat. And look for those marketing trends and opportunities, new ways to market. Build that giant white hat. That's what I'm really talking about in that first bullet. And this, I think, is the most powerful thing. And you can do this if you develop a subculture in your company. You can do this. You can invite a VP to be part of the group, but let him know we're flat when we come in here. You're not a VP. We value your opinion as much as we value Joe Blow technologist or Joe Blow engineer, etc. So some noted common weaknesses, though. There's no pilot programs. It seems like we have this idea of it's got to be $1 billion business or nothing. And I'm thinking, boy, I'd rather introduce 100 pilot programs inexpensively with the talent I have in-house, giving them an opportunity to do that, than go try one business that I think, that I'm guessing, that I'm betting might be $1 billion idea. The confidential story there really is a story. I can't tell you the technology, but one guy got enough frustrated where he decided, you know what, I'm just going to start doing this. And he started making revenue, and so he finally went to HP and said, hey, I started this idea and I'm making revenue, and he was about to get his hand slapped until they saw the revenue. So I know that's really gutsy, but I'd be willing to try it. And just to ask, are you involved with dinosaurs or not? Are there new devices? I mean, obviously, printers could go away. I mean, I see a lot of people carrying tablets or big cell phones around now. And what new trends? So any questions?